Welcome back. Welcome to the channel. My name is Brandon. I make videos just like this about what's like living, playing, everything else in between here in the Chicago suburbs, as well as live streams on what's happening in our local Chicagoland real estate market. So whether you're watching this video, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, or watching the rerun, we're going to be diving in on what's been happening in the Chicagoland real estate market. We haven't done a live stream like this in a while, and it's the 6-month mark of the year. And we just want to kind of touch base on kind of everything that's been happening. And today I have a special guest again, Skip Brown, but also his partner in crime, Jesse Furrow. Welcome to the show, fellas.
How you doing, Brandon?
What's going on?
So, real quick, you guys haven't been on the channel. Jesse's first time on the show. Skip, you've been here for a while. We haven't done a live in quite a minute, but if you guys want to intro your guys' selves, who you are, what you do, and everything else in between, feel free.
Yep, got it. Well, good to see everybody again. Skip Brown with Compass Mortgage. A little bit about myself. Married, 4 kids, 2 in college, 2 still yet in high school. But I grew up in the DuPage County area, specifically Wheaton, all the way from elementary school through college. My wife and I both graduated Wheaton College. My oldest daughter will be heading back in another month to begin her senior year at Wheaton College. Had 3 brothers that all grew up in the area, all played sports through Wheaton College as well. So been around the town and the area for quite some time, been doing mortgages now at Compass Mortgage for just over 21 years, which is more than 3/4 of the life of these 2 other guys on the call with me. But enjoy helping people and excited to be a part of the call today.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. I'm Jesse Furrow. Like Brandon said, I'm the other half of the Skip Brown team over here. So I've been in the mortgage business since 2019. So been doing it not quite as long as Skip has, but I am also kind of in the DuPage, Kane County area. My wife and I actually met at Wheaton College where Skip went just a few years later. But yeah, so we've just been enjoying living around here. My wife's family is from the area, and we have an unhealthy amount of connections with the whole Skip Brown crew. So it just made sense to team up with him. So glad to be a part of it. Love the opportunity to serve people. And yeah, loving it.
And Nate chimed in, go Thunder. Appreciate that, Nate.
I think Nate's a Wheaton guy, right? Maybe. Lincoln,
yeah.
Wheaton guy. But Jesse, you're not from the Chicagoland area, correct?
Correct, yeah. So I actually grew up in central Indiana, very briefly lived in Iowa, and then made my way to Wheaton.
Nice.
For college. So I've been all around the Midwest.
Awesome. Yeah. So with that being said, I know a lot of people that are watching this off this YouTube, they reach out to Skip and I about, relocating to the area. But if you have questions on, someone that's actually done it, Jesse can be a great resource. But like I said, if you guys have any questions, throughout this video, drop them down below and we'll kind of get after it. But first things first, 6 months through the year. I feel like the market has been pretty hectic and just, weird, evidently, with inventory, interest rates are like a roller coaster. But from your guys' opinion, what have you guys seen in kind of the mortgage world within the first 6 months of the year?
Yeah, I'll take the first run at it. It's a big giant grind. I think we all came into this year thinking and hoping that rates would turn back around, right? We spent all last year seeing rates climb, and everybody just anticipated that when it's all one directional, we'll see it come back down. And the opposite has been true. We saw a little bit of reprieve, but just as much as, or as quickly as we think we're gaining ground, we lose ground. So that's been very difficult because I think it's very frustrating for people in general, specifically buyers, hoping that rates go down. Was talking to someone earlier this week where they were looking to make an offer on a place and then pull back once they realized where mortgage rates were. But I think it's just mental. people are tired of getting beat up and they just want some wins. And this market right now isn't giving a lot of buyers a lot of wins right now.
Totally. How about you, Jesse?
Yeah, kind of just echoing the same thing. I think last year it was unprecedented, kind of what we were seeing with, tons and tons of multiple offer situations and houses going way above asking price and things like that. And I think everyone kind of thought that, like Skip said, it was going to peel back and people were going to start getting houses under asking price. And if anything, it's gotten worse. Just, they're the same amount or maybe a little bit less competition, but, prices haven't peeled back at all. And rates have just continued to go up. So just a lot of competition in the area. There's a lot of people who are still wanting to buy.
And then when we get from go ahead, Skip.
I was going to say, to Jesse's point, had a client looking to buy a home in Glen Ellen. They were one of 33 offers, and they lost. Well, that just means that 32 people lost. And so at that price point, any other home that comes up, there's 32 buyers. And again, that's just crazy to me. I like it for many reasons. It's great as a seller, but even that, it gets to be a little bit nutty. But it's just the market hasn't kind of found itself to a more traditional level as we had hoped.
No, for sure. And I think, the big thing, and like I said in this video, to the 10 people watching, if you have questions, drop them down below. But, I feel like it's a good and bad thing. Obviously, it's bad because it's an inventory issue, but it just shows how highly desirable, where we live, work, and play kind of thing. So, in terms of any market crash, in my opinion, I don't foresee it anywhere here in the DuPage County area. I know, Skip, you've been in this for a long time and have seen, 08 to 11. What are your thoughts on any potential market crash?
Yeah, I don't think so. And I'll give you my opinion. And I guess that's really all that it is. People with mortgage rates that are 3-4%, a higher percentage of people that own homes now have those rates, aren't likely moving unless they have to. And so a lot of those people out in the suburbs, specifically DuPage, Kane County, they're just going to stand pat unless, they had an extra, kid that they have to join or get a little bit more space, or maybe they're looking for a specific school district. Not only that, but specific to the suburbs, always people would migrate from the city to the suburbs. When you're young, like you guys are, you think, I'm going to live in the city for a while. Maybe you meet the right person, you decide to get married, and as soon as you start thinking about kids and family, you start thinking about schools. Well, your options are, if you stay in the city, you probably are sending your kids to private, or maybe you move out to the suburbs. So when you still got some migration from the city to the suburbs, and then you compound that with the fact that a lot of people in the suburbs just aren't moving, you're going to get a lot of demand for very little supply. So in the immediate future, 3 months, 6 months, maybe even more, I just don't see this, housing crash from a pricing standpoint coming. But what's always amazing to me is you can never predict the news cycles. You just can't. So whether there's another war that breaks out or the Fed decides to do this or that, you never know. But based on just the fact that supply and demand is so out of sorts, I'd have a hard time believing that there's much change in the suburbs anytime soon.
No, for sure. Jesse, did you have anything to light on when it comes to a potential market crash or anything along that nature?
Yeah, I mean, it's simple supply and demand. If there's 32 people who lost, they're probably going to be looking for another house soon. And so until that, and I think you mentioned this on one of your other videos, Brandon, but, there's no 1,000 homes aren't being built tomorrow. There's just demand that's pent up there. So, until it cools down a little bit, it can't crash because people are still willing to buy homes.
Right. Yeah.
That's the other hard part too in the area. New construction. There's just not land. I forget what the amount was. I read this article a while ago in DuPage County specifically. There's no land available because it's forest preserves, park districts, and everything try to gobble up and hold land, and everything else is already developed. That just makes it really challenging in the environment that it's at.
Unless you want to go, pretty far out west to like an Oswego, Sugar Grove kind of thing, or go pretty far down south to like South Plainfield. But in my opinion, at the end of the day, from a wealth building standpoint and just in terms of infrastructure and safety, I mean, DuPage County, Western Suburbs has it. We have, the Metro train line, BNSF, to take you from east to west to get you to the city of Chicago. Great schools, great job markets, great little downtown area. So I think there's a lot of great stuff happening. And like both of you guys said with the new builds, I think that's a huge thing compared to, other states like Florida, Texas, and stuff like that, where, at the end of the day, those builders still need to make their profits, but the difference from the 3% to 7%, building houses are still the same price, but the affordability is just, a significant more, issue. You get all those California buyers trying to relocate their businesses and paying cash, no appraisals, and so on and so on. But I'm going to pop up an article. Skip, I know you love headlines, but this article basically talks about nearly everyone with a mortgage has an interest rate below 6%, prompting many to stay put. So 91.8% of U.S. mortgaged homes have a rate below 6%, which is a record high of 92.9% in the second quarter of 2022. 82% has a rate below 5%. Below 4%, 62% people have a rate below 4%, and then below 3%, around just under 24% of people that have mortgaged homes in the U.S. are below a 3% interest rate. So with that being said, what do you guys think in the mortgage world? Kind of where's like the sweet spot that opens up for people with that 3.5%, 4%, 2.5%, whatever the interest rate is? Like, where is it the point where it's like, okay, the payment's great and all, but like we have 3 kids. Yep. The baby's in our room. What do we do?
I'll take a run at it, and I think it's. A lot of it is headlines. Like I said, me, I'm not a fan of headlines because it just creates drama and reaction. But to that point, you'll get a lot more people that are interested to sell a home and then buy something new if rates are at 5 versus 7. But where's the number that probably starts to make people become more active? I would venture to say that it's probably 6% or less. And the only reason I say that is, now that our dose of reality has come where rates have been 7 and more, if we get back to 6, you'll feel like I've got to win. It's kind of like, hey, things are on sale versus where they were. But just to kind of give you some perspective, I put these numbers together. On a $380,000 loan, 0.25% is roughly about $65 a month. It's something, okay, but it's not everything. But every $10,000 that you borrow, is going to be about $70 a month. Okay, so if I borrow a little bit less, drop the price. But then every $1,000 in property taxes is $83 a month. So it's the combination of all those 3 that really can make or break a payment. So I think the challenge for those people that are sitting at a 3% rate, a mortgage balance of 300 and property taxes of X, if they want to move up, and let's say they go to 7 and then they go to $100,000 more borrowed and those property taxes go up to X plus 2,000, it's like this trifecta of whammies that just punch them in the gut, and their payments, clearly $1,500, $2,000 more than where they were. That's where people aren't able to swallow it. But I do think mentally, if you start to see rates come back down to 6, that falls out of the equation, and then people are being more apt to move.
How about you, Jesse? Where do you think the interest rates need to be to kind of open up this market even more?
Yeah, I think it's impossible to, put your finger on it. If I could predict where that was going to be, I'd be a rich man. But no, but it's just.
Instead, you're just extremely handsome, and that's it.
Yes, I mean, you take what you can get. No, but I just think that, I think rate is what a lot of people focus on, and it's what's the rate, what's the rate, what's the rate. But Skip said, what are the property taxes? The property taxes might swing it more one way or another. But the reality is we can change your rate once rates do come down later on with a refinance. So I think that the phrase marry the house, date the rate. It's cheesy, but it's true. Rates will not stay. Hopefully, they won't stay this high forever. So I don't think that they're. I don't know what the number is that's going to get everyone going crazy for it. But if you could stomach it for 12 months and refinance, sounds good to me.
For sure. Skip, when's the last time interest rates were in the 5? Like just any, like 5 point, like anything, like consistent.
Yeah. No. One of the things that both Jesse and I do is we consistently keep in touch with clients that we've worked with. Mm-hmm. And we'll review files more than anything just to make sure that the loans still fit for their needs. So when we do that, we pull up what their rate was. And I just had a year go by with a past client, and it was 5 1/4. So, closed a year ago at 5 1/4, 5.375. That sounds like a dream. Mm-hmm. At the time you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe rates are that high. Right. But here we are 2% later, So it's been a while. But I just think that, again, as long as rates stay neutral, maybe they come down or they just kind of bounce around a little bit, that's great. But for buyers, I'm sure for just borrowers in general, they just don't want to see this meteoric rise that we've seen over the last year and a half.
No, for sure. I feel like, in my opinion, because obviously I don't look at, rates and stuff like that from a day-to-day basis, kind of like you guys do. But I feel like, just anything like 5.7, like if it just touches that next year or something, yeah. I think floodgates open just because I feel like 7% is not, not stopping someone at a $700,000 to $900,000 price point because they're moving because they need the space or life changes, truthfully.
It's like this. I mean, I saw, this was a little while ago when egg prices were going crazy. Well, you still buy eggs. You come up with ways to maybe not buy as many, or if you can avoid it. But if you have to buy eggs, you have to buy eggs. Right. If it's time for you to move, relocation for work, or like I said, family size or whatever, you're still going to embrace that reality. It's just if you can get creative to not, or be patient. But then that's the hard part is, how long do we have to be patient until we see 6%, 5%? That is the $1 million question.
No, for sure. So basically, what is your guys' kind of, mortgage forecast outlook for the last 6 months? And I mean, obviously it's hard to predict. You guys don't have a crystal ball or anything like that, but what do you foresee in 2024, and how do we, what needs to happen in the world for rates to kind of drop or get better, hypothetically?
Yeah, I can jump on this one. Yeah, I can jump on this one first. I mean, interest rates are tied to inflation. So, as the inflation numbers continue to improve and continue to go lower, at that point, they'll kind of reel back the interest rates a little bit. The Fed will. So, but until, the inflation is under control and we see it for a consistent time rather than just, a one-off, it's not going to shift in a big way. And I don't think, think of interest rates more like a train that's moving. It's not a lightning strike. They move pretty slowly and they kind of trend in one direction and then they trend in the other direction. So, they can move a decent amount in a day, but, having a big sway from, 7% to 5%, it's going to be a gradual decline.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to agree. I just have a hard time seeing rates move dramatically. I think today was good news. Like Jesse was kind of alluding to, inflation numbers came in lower than they anticipated. That's a good sign. We need that to compound with the Fed coming out and saying, okay, I'm not going to raise rates anytime soon. Mm-hmm. All right, that's a good sign. Now we need the economy not to go gangbusters.
Mhm.
You know, because that's a hard part. You know, when you buy a house, you actually become a fan of people losing their job, maybe some world chaos, and you know, people start to buy bonds as opposed to maybe some of the more riskier stocks or funds.
Mhm.
But I just have a hard time believing that rates are going to move anywhere the balance of this year. You just don't know for sure. One of the things that in the articles that you referenced earlier that I read was it was mentioning these elevated interest rates.
Mhm.
And again, this is why I hate headlines,
Right.
because it's not that the interest rate is elevated, certainly relative to where it was, but it's just the reality of the rates. You know, it's not like rates are really high right now. It's just the better way to say it is rates were extremely low for the last 3 years. And especially with younger buyers, they don't know 8%, 10%,
Right.
12%. You talk to any one of our parents, oh, when I bought my first house, 13%, right? So I'd be surprised if you see much the balance of this year. Next year is a total who knows what, right? There's just way too much news to kind of go around. What's going on with Europe, what's going to go on with Russia, what's going to do this, is
Right.
China going to do this, there's an election next year, crapshoot. All I would tell you is this, and I'm going to speak for everyone on this phone call. We give tremendous advice to those going through the process of building or buying a home, mortgaging a home, and we'll help you through it. The thing is, don't sweat it, because if you wait for the right time, barely in life are you ever going to do that.
Right. And I think the big thing is just if you're a buyer, I think, obviously people buy and sell real estate because of life changes. But truthfully, I feel like on a very, very just like low surface level, obviously there's a lot more things that go into when buying a home. But truly, the two questions you ask yourself initially, I feel like, is one, do you like the home? And two, do you like the payment? And let's figure everything else from there. Because if you don't like the payment, I mean, there's no reason to kind of go for it because, Jesse talked about property taxes. Property taxes in Downers Grove at 350K look better than Glen Ellen house at 350K with the property taxes and everything like that. Mr. Dave O'Donnell says, what is everyone seeing with Airbnb loans? Skip, you want to touch base for Dave?
Yeah. Mr. O'Donnell, good to see you, my friend. Airbnb, the whole rental market, it's a different world. Rewind the clock 5 years ago, people didn't talk short-term rentals, STRs. Everybody's got a new fancy word for it, STRs. You do STR loans? What's that? Short-term rental. I think that those can work great, but keep in mind, in general, mortgage guidelines aren't set for short-term rentals. They're really more specific to long-term rentals. To buy a short-term rental, it's treated the same as a long-term rental. Rates on those aren't that great, but what we've seen specifically over the last year plus, upfront costs on rental properties are probably at least double, if not more so, than a primary residence. So it's not that the rate is just awful. Rates have always been a little bit higher than that of a primary residence. It's just the upfront cost. You're going to plan on paying at least another % or 2 in closing costs relative to that of a primary residence. So more than anything, you just got to make sure that you've got the assets available to do it. But then look at a big picture. You make money on rentals when you can cash flow for sure, but you buy it at X. And I'm of the opinion you actually want to sell it at X times something, not just X plus something. But good question, Dave.
And I think with Airbnbs too, there's a lot of news with like hypothetical Airbnb crashes or whatever the case may be. But if you're not renting it out, then it's kind of just a liability at that point. And you're paying the mortgage, especially if you own a primary residence as well. So not a lot of Airbnbs here. I know Naperville banned Airbnbs quite a few years ago because there was a huge house party in a mansion and they canceled all Airbnbs. But I want to bring up this article since we're highlighting the Chicago suburbs. real estate market. But this article basically talks about that was released last month that home buyer demand lives in the Chicago suburbs. So why it matters is because remote workers and millennials flocked to the suburbs in recent years to get more bang for their buck. Now some suburban areas are just as pricey as the city. Home prices have dropped way faster in the city than the metro as a whole. And without a widespread of, working in the office and, vertical living condo apartment buildings is, really quiet. And areas like Naperville, year over year prices are going up 7%, while Oak Brook is going, 25% year over year. And I think the big thing with that, just from a real estate standpoint, in my opinion, is that, Jesse, you could probably say the same thing, but I feel like just a lot of my college buddies are kind of just like, the city was locked down for a while. They never have to go back to the city. They do enjoy renting because you can find some pretty killer rental deals because, how apartment complexes make their money is with occupancy. Just like an Airbnb occupancy kind of makes your money there. But, your people are getting more bang for their buck. I feel like a lot of my college friends are getting married and planning next steps for kids and stuff. Like that. But Skip, you've raised a family here. Have you ever lived in the city of Chicago?
I've not. No, but I had I have an identical twin brother, very handsome individual that, once he graduated, lived in the suburbs, but then decided he worked downtown. So he lived downtown for about 5 years. And he loved it. He was right by the train station, walked to everything, and it's great. But here's the reality is it's just stage of life, right? And again, there are very few people that remain urban dwellers. Just because, again, you get to a point where you have kids in school, you're like, am I going to send my kid to the public school? Well, that's not really conveniently located, or it doesn't have the great test scores. So I want to send my kid to private school, which gets expensive. So then you think about migrating out to the suburbs. And quite honestly, very few people, it's the young professional world that usually works and lives in the city. And then you start migrating out. So people love it. It's great to do it. But ultimately, it just starts to get expensive. And the suburban life offers a lot, specifically for families, is the best way to do it. So,
and to piggyback on that, I think I've got a friend of mine who's looking to buy this fall, and a lot of they're looking to buy a condo. You're not necessarily looking to buy a single family. There aren't as many in the city, and you look at HOA, and HOA's $400 or $500 a month. Well, that's a lot of buying power if you don't have an HOA in the suburbs, and so there's give and take with everything. But I think that we were just talking about the different other factors that go into that monthly mortgage payment, and the HOA is a huge one, for people who are living in the city. And yeah, sure, you may get a gym membership out of it or something like that with your association, but there's still, a lot of give and take when it comes to, buying in the city versus buying in the suburbs.
For sure. And I think a lot with that give and take as well is that, I feel like we have the luxury where, we have easy public transportation to get to the city of Chicago kind of whenever we want from the suburbs. We can drive, we have highways and everything like that, which is a true luxury, kind of my opinion. And it is correct that you do get a lot more bang for your buck here, over here in the suburbs for sure. And then I'll pop up another article because, I kind of work the suburbs primarily, but this pretty much America's surprise reveal is that it's all about the suburbs. And the big picture is that the number of demographic, housing, and business trends are coming to revive the suburbs. By the numbers, 2010 and 2020, the share of Americans living in the suburbs grew by 10.5%. What's happening? An increasing share of millennials, the largest generation, are buying homes and settling down. They're choosing to do outside the cities. Another major trend driving people to the suburbs is the new era of hybrid and remote work. And the revival of the suburbs is also bringing new restaurants and new retailers to these smaller town centers. Salad chain Sweetgreen, I know they have one in downtown Naperville, but in my opinion, with a lot of great stuff happening, casino coming in Aurora, Chicago Bears potentially coming to the suburbs. I think there's a lot of great opportunity when it comes to real estate in the suburbs, especially here in the Chicagoland. I think there's a lot of good stuff going on. But what are your guys' thoughts on kind of what's living in the suburbs and everything like that?
Go ahead, Jess.
Yeah, everything's going retro. Everything's a throwback now. So we're bringing it back to the suburbs. No, but I think that you can get a little bit of, and I guess this is more personality wise. I've lived here for 10 years now, and I've probably been to the city 10 times. And it's just, that's not my cup of tea. But I think that you can still have, that city experience, but just not every day. But like you said, you can take the train in, you can drive in, you can go to all those restaurants, but you don't necessarily have to live on top of the restaurant to go to the restaurant.
Right.
And I have, my in-laws, they go to the city all the time. And it's like, hey, we're having our night out in the city, but we live in Wheaton and it's great. Right. And we can do both. So I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. I don't think that you have to choose to be a city person or have to choose to be, a suburbanite. I think you can have your feet in both places. But as far as, raising a family, I have a little one, and thinking about that kind of stuff, like I couldn't imagine, being downtown and trying to raise a little one and not being able to just walk in my lawn and just plop her down on the grass and just kind of hang out and chill that way. So, but I think it really kind of goes back to, you can have both, just a little bit of driving.
Yeah. And I totally agree. And I think that's the natural migration of just, living. I love doing loans in Chicago because it's typically a transient group. You're buying a place, you're going to be there 3 to 5 to 7 years and then either buy up in the city or migrate out to the burbs. But to Jesse's point, I'm older, guys. I now worry about my kids when they're going into the city, where my social life is the youth sporting event and the sidelines with other soccer dads or parents. So it's just different. But one of the things that's kind of cool about the city is you start to get, different restaurants, different places that are, if you wanted to get to a cool, trendy restaurant, you needed to go into the city, right? Not so much. Like even think of Naperville. There are so many up and coming trendy restaurants. Listen, in the hometowns of Glen Ellen or even like Geneva, Maize and Mash and stuff like that, you didn't have restaurants like that were kind of cool social, burger social, right? Where it's more of a bar hangout, but it's there. And you just saw people that gathered. That was the city 20 years ago. Now that starts to migrate. So those people that really enjoy that kind of, let's say, social life of the city now can find opportunities for that in the suburbs as well.
And I think we saw a lot of that from COVID, honestly, is because the city was just more locked down. And I think that people were like, we've got to get out. And it kind of revitalized a lot of these, older small towns. I know Wheaton, COVID, they were like, all right, we're throwing up a tent all the way down Hill Street. And it's like, you go on a Friday night and it's popping down there. Just, every restaurant has outside tables and everyone's serving drinks. And it's fun, it's a fun experience and it's a fun atmosphere. And they're not the only ones that do that.
I think that's the best. I think that's one of the most underrated things about the Chicago suburbs is that there's so many little gems. I mean, there's truly great places to eat. I mean, Burger Social, Maize and Mash, Noble House, all those places. I love because we're all Wheaton guys, and I think with Wheaton, just the tents on Hill Street is probably the most incredible thing. I mean, I can't go down there without seeing someone.
Well, it's funny. I'll tell you a quick story. I was having breakfast not too long ago with my brothers. So I've got 3, Jesse and his 4 brothers-in-law and his father-in-law. So there's, 10 of us at a table having breakfast on the street. And you look over here and there's this person that you went to school with. You look over there's a person that you work with and this. And that's the great part about it is it helps build community. That's the fun part about doing what we do. We get to serve that community. So that is cool about those kind of places for sure.
Yeah, and that's the best part, building community. I personally love being able to just go down to downtown Glen, downtown Wheaton, see clients and people that I know and just be like, hey, what's up? because they're usually saying I'm in real estate and they're yelling it from the rooftop. So it's perfect.
That's usually later in the evening after the third or fourth beverage, you know. So.
Hill Street on Fridays for sure.
Yeah.
But if you were jumping in the market as a buyer, I mean, like, it's extremely competitive, especially the western suburbs. I'm biased. I think it's the best place to live in the Chicagoland area is the western suburbs. Anything as far west as Naperville, all the way east to Elmhurst, and everything in between, Wheaton, Glen Ellyn, Lisle, everything like that, Downers Grove, Hinsdale, all incredible places to live, but obviously extremely competitive. People are moving here for schools, don't want to be in the city. How does one become a competitive buyer when they're going up against 33 offers, when they're going up against 5 offers, when they're going up to 10 offers? Like, what does that look like?
Go for it, Jess.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we say this all the time, at Compass, but we have Get Committed, and that's kind of our go-to. So what Get Committed is it allows us to get the buyer through the underwriting process prior to even, finding a home that they want to put in an offer in on. So with that, you're through the process. It essentially makes you like a cash buyer, because that financing contingency kind of goes away. Cash buyers generally aren't the highest buyers. They can be, but they're generally not the highest. So you could potentially outbid a cash buyer and really present the strongest offer available by, getting your mortgage done prior to even starting your search. So I would highly recommend that. And you can ask Skip or myself about that more later if you want to. But that would be the go-to that I would say.
Totally agree. It's a no-brainer. And I think the hard part that I understand, because when we say, hey, we want to Get Committed, sign these papers, give us these forms, buyers tend to be a little bit of hesitant because they don't want to commit. Well, what if I don't find something? What if I don't do? We've wasted time in paperwork. Mm-hmm. Okay. It doesn't hurt you in any way. We don't even have to do it with a hard credit inquiry. That's the beautiful thing about this is we can do all that without hurting your credit score. Okay. So ask us about the Get Committed program, but it just allows you to go through it all and be prepared. All I need is find the right place. And that just makes it so much easier for you from a stress standpoint. It certainly makes it easier for Brandon in negotiations, and it removes any sort of contingencies. So that's your best tool these days. You have to get as many hurdles out of the way so that you can jump and be ready to go as soon as you see the right place. And that's the challenge because the market right now requires you to move quickly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think just having, good understanding of the market and the process, because at the end of the day, you don't have to know everything because that's what we're here for. But, I found success with, if you understand the process, you take time to kind of learn, take the phone calls from us and everything like that, you're typically put in the best position to succeed. And honestly, if you're buying next year, whether it be summer, spring of next year, reach out right now. Because truthfully, if you can start getting educated on the process right now, kind of looking where you are at in terms financially and just preparing, it can just make everything so much more smoother. We have you on our radar. You tell us you're looking to buy, you'll probably never not hear from us ever again because
right.
Skip will bug you for the rest of your life.
Well, we just want to be friends. That's all,
We want to be yelled at on Friday night on Hale Street,
That's right.
We want people to know us.
That's all it is. But so thanks for coming on, fellas. Is there a good place to reach you guys if anyone has any questions?
Yeah, you can always go to our microsite. You can just Google either my name or Jesse's name. It'll take you there. Easiest way to get a hold of me is cell phone, 630-417-9016. But yeah, if you Google Skip Brown Compass, Jesse Furrow Compass, you'll find us. There's lots of good information there. But honestly, reach out anytime with questions because this is great to do it in this format. But sometimes you feel like I don't want to put something in a chat because you want to keep it more personal. shoot me a text anytime.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How about you, Jesse?
Yeah,
Contact
same
number?
thing. Yeah, 317-452-2417. Call, email, text, whatever's easiest. We'll reply. We'll reply however you reach out.
Yeah.
And honestly, we reach out extremely quick. Probably quicker than anyone. It's kind of ridiculous.
We have issues. We admit it.
Yeah, Skip and I are negotiating deals at like 6:30 in the morning. So literally text us whenever. So,
I love it.
but thanks for everyone for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next live stream.